I winked at the court jester. The next day, 10 wolf advisors knelt before me, and I rose as Alpha Queen. They called me the Frozen Luna, and I suppose they were right. For 5 years, I had been ice, beautiful, untouchable, and utterly lifeless. My reflection in the polished silver mirror showed a woman carved from winter itself, alabaster skin that hadn't seen sunlight in too long, white hair that fell like fresh snow down my back, and eyes the pale blue of a frozen lake. I was an albino wolf, the rarest bloodline, and I looked every bit the ethereal queen my people expected. But ethereal is just another word for ghost, and that's what I had become, a specter haunting her own throne. The morning started like every other morning in the past 1,826 days. Yes, I counted, because time becomes your enemy when you're drowning in it. I woke alone in sheets that smelled of lavender and loneliness, in a bed far too large for one person, and I did not cry. I had stopped crying after the first year. Tears require feeling, and I had carefully, methodically, frozen every feeling inside me until I was numb enough to survive. My lady-in-waiting, Mira, entered with a tray of food I wouldn't eat, and a smile I didn't deserve. She had kind eyes, Mira, the kind of eyes that saw too much and said too little. She laid out my mourning clothes, because even after 5 years, I still wore the colors of death, deep purple, nearly black, with silver threading that caught the light like trapped starlight. It was beautiful in the way funeral flowers are beautiful, appropriate but suffocating. "The council requests your presence at breakfast, my queen," Mira said softly, as if afraid her voice might shatter me. Maybe it would have once. Now I was too frozen to break. "Of course they do," I murmured, rising from the bed with practiced grace. Grace was easy when you felt nothing. It was just movement, choreographed and empty. I let Mira dress me, fasten the heavy silver circlet on my head. Not a crown, never a crown, because I was Luna, not Alpha. My mate had been Alpha, my dead mate, my forever lost mate, and without him, I was simply the woman who kept his throne warm until someone decided I had mourned long enough. The Council of 10 Wolves. That's what they called themselves. These men who had slowly, insidiously, stolen my power while I was too buried in grief to notice. They sat around my breakfast table like they owned it, drinking my wine, eating my food, making decisions about my kingdom without bothering to ask my opinion. They smiled at me with teeth too sharp and eyes too calculating, and they spoke to me the way you speak to a child or a simpleton. Councillor Aldrich, their leader, was already holding court when I entered. He didn't stand. None of them did anymore. That should have enraged me, but rage requires heat, and I had none left. I took my seat at the head of the table. My seat, my table, my God's-damned kingdom, and folded my hands in my lap like a good, obedient widow. "Your Majesty," Aldrich began, and I hated the way he said it, like the words were a leash. "We've been discussing your future. It's been 5 years since Alpha Kieran's passing. Moon Goddess rest his soul." He made the sign of blessing across his chest, and the other 9 mirrored him. Performative piety. I wanted to laugh, but I had forgotten how. "The kingdom needs an heir. You need a mate. We've compiled a list of suitable alpha candidates from neighboring territories. Strong bloodlines, political advantages. I'm not interested," I said, my voice as flat and colorless as I felt. This wasn't the first time we'd had this conversation. It wouldn't be the last. They would push, I would resist, and nothing would change because I was too tired to fight, and they knew it. Aldrich's smile tightened. "With all due respect, my queen, this isn't about interest. This is about duty. You cannot remain unmated forever. The pack grows restless. They whisper that you're not fit to lead, that your grief has made you weak. Then perhaps they should say it to my face," I interrupted, meeting his eyes. For just a moment, I let my wolf surface, just enough for him to see the ice-blue glow, the flash of power I still possessed even if I rarely used it. He flinched. Good. Even frozen water could cut. "I am Luna by birthright and queen by marriage. I will mate when and if I choose, not when you decree it convenient." The table fell silent. I could feel their disapproval like a physical weight, pressing down on my shoulders, trying to force me into submission. But I was already as low as I could go. You can't push down someone who's already buried. Councillor Brennan, younger than Aldrich but twice as ambitious, leaned forward. "We only want what's best for you, Your Majesty. Surely you can see that this extended mourning is what? Inappropriate? Excessive? Inconvenient for your political machinations?" I stood, my chair scraping against stone with a sound like bones breaking. This meeting is over. I have business to attend to. I didn't, but they didn't need to know that. My only business was surviving another day without screaming. I left the dining hall with my head high and my heart hollow, Mira trailing behind me like a faithful shadow. The castle corridors stretched before me, familiar and suffocating. I knew every stone, every tapestry, every place where sunlight fell through the high windows. I had walked these halls with Kieran once, his hand warm in mine, his laugh echoing off the walls. Now the halls were silent except for the whisper of my skirts and the distant sounds of servants going about their duties. Everyone avoided me, the frozen Luna, the ghost queen, the woman who couldn't let go. Maybe they were right. Maybe I was broken beyond repair. Maybe I should have accepted one of their carefully selected alpha candidates and produced the required heirs and played my part in their political theater. But every time I tried to imagine it, another man's touch, another mate bond, another chance at happiness, my stomach twisted with revulsion. Kieran had been mine, and he was gone, and I was still here, and nothing made sense anymore. The day dragged on with excruciating slowness. I held court, settled disputes between merchants, approved budgets I barely looked at because the council would override me anyway, and smiled the empty smile I had perfected. No one saw the screaming underneath. No one ever did. Evening came, bringing with it the announcement that entertainment had been arranged for dinner, an entertainers' troupe from the Southern Territories, specializing in music and comedy. I wanted to refuse, to hide in my chambers with a book I wouldn't read, and wine I would drink too much of, but the council had already accepted on my behalf. Of course they had. They made all my decisions now. So I dressed again. Another morning gown, another circlet, another mask of regal indifference. I took my place at the high table in the great hall, surrounded by nobles who smiled and laughed and pretended they didn't pity me. The food was exquisite and tasted like ashes. The wine was fine and felt like drinking shadows. I was halfway through the third course when the entertainers were announced. Musicians entered first, playing lively tunes that made my head ache. Then acrobats, flipping and spinning with a grace that seemed to mock my heaviness. And finally, the court jester. He tumbled into the hall with bells on his motley costume jingling, his face painted in exaggerated expressions, and for a moment, he was just another performer, forgettable, insignificant. But then he looked up, and I saw his eyes. They were storm gray, deep and knowing, and they held something I hadn't seen in 5 years, genuine warmth, not pity, not calculation, just warmth, like sunlight breaking through winter clouds. He held my gaze for a heartbeat longer than appropriate, and something in my chest, something I thought had died with Kieran, stirred. His performance was brilliant. He juggled, he joked, he told stories that had the entire hall roaring with laughter. But it was more than that. There was intelligence in his comedy, philosophy woven into his foolishness. He quoted ancient poets while pretending to be an idiot. He spoke truths disguised as jests. And when he made a joke about a lonely queen waiting for spring to return to her frozen kingdom, his eyes found mine again. And I knew. He was speaking directly to me. I don't know what possessed me. Maybe it was the wine. Maybe it was 5 years of suffocating grief finally breaking through the ice. Maybe it was the moon goddess herself, reaching down to shake me awake. But when he told his final joke, something about a wolf who forgot she had teeth, I laughed. Not a polite chuckle, not a social smile. I laughed. From my belly, from my bones, from the deepest part of me that had been silent for so long. The sound shocked me. It shocked everyone. The entire hall fell silent, heads turning toward me in disbelief. The frozen Luna doesn't laugh. The frozen Luna doesn't feel. But I was laughing, and it felt like breaking the surface of dark water, gasping for air I didn't know I needed. The jester's eyes widened, and something in his expression softened. Triumph, maybe, or relief, or recognition. He bowed deeply, his bells chiming, and when he straightened, our eyes locked again, and I winked at him. It was impulse. Pure, thoughtless, grateful impulse. A simple gesture of thanks for giving me back something I thought I'd lost forever. Just a wink, nothing more. But the moment I did it, I felt the entire room shift. I heard the intake of breath from the nobles around me. I saw Aldrich's face darken with disapproval. I felt the weight of 100 judging eyes. But I didn't care. For the first time in 5 years, I didn't care what they thought. The jester's smile widened, not the painted smile of his performance, but something real and intimate, and meant only for me. He bowed again, deeper this time, and when the entertainers filed out, his eyes never left mine until the last possible moment. Dinner continued, but I barely tasted the rest of it. Something had shifted inside me, like ice cracking under pressure. I felt warm. I felt awake. I felt terrified and exhilarated and more alive than I had been since the day they brought Kieran's body home from the border wars. That night, I dismissed Mira early. I told her I wanted to be alone, that I was tired, but the truth was I couldn't bear company. I needed to process this strange, unfamiliar feeling flowering in my chest. Hope. I think it was hope, though I barely recognized it anymore. I stood at my chamber window, looking out over the moonlit gardens, my mind replaying that laugh over and over, the way it felt, the way it sounded, the way the jester had looked at me like I was a person instead of a tragedy, like I was a woman instead of a monument to grief. I should have gone to bed. I should have dismissed it as a momentary lapse, a fluke, nothing more. But I couldn't stop thinking about those storm-gray eyes, about the warmth in them, about the way he had seen me, really seen me, when everyone else just saw the frozen Luna. I heard the sound so softly I almost thought I imagined it, a light footfall, the whisper of fabric against stone. My wolf senses flared, not in alarm, but in awareness. Someone was in my chambers, someone who smelled of pine and winter storms, and something wild I couldn't name. I turned slowly, my heart pounding in a way it hadn't in years. He stood in the shadows near my door, the jester, his costume gone, replaced by simple dark clothes that revealed a body far too fit and powerful for a mere entertainer. His face was clean of paint, and without the theatrical makeup, he was breathtakingly handsome. Strong jaw, sharp cheekbones, and those eyes, those impossible storm-gray eyes, fixed on me with an intensity that made my breath catch. "My queen," he said, and his voice was completely different now. No longer the exaggerated tones of a performer. This voice was low, educated, rich with something that made my skin prickle with awareness. "I came because your eyes asked me to. I should have called for guards. I should have demanded he leave. He had committed treason just by being here, entered the Luna Queen's private chambers without permission, risked execution for this moment. But I didn't move. I couldn't move, because as he stepped closer, as the moonlight caught his features, I smelled it, his scent, not just pine and storms. Underneath that was something else, something that called to my wolf with a voice like thunder, something that made my frozen heart suddenly, violently, beat again. The mate bond. Faint, tentative, barely there, but unmistakable. The moon goddess mark of destiny, the pull between souls meant to be one. And as I stared at this stranger, this jester, this man who had made me laugh for the first time in 5 years, I realized something that terrified me more than anything else. My life was about to change. Everything I had built, the ice, the numbness, the careful control, was about to shatter. Because the moon goddess doesn't ask permission. She doesn't wait until you're ready. She sends you laughter and hope, and a man with storm-gray eyes who enters your chamber in the dead of night and changes everything. "Who are you?" I whispered. He smiled, and it was sad and knowing, and full of a longing that mirrored my own. "Someone who's been waiting a very long time to find you." The scent hit me like a physical blow, stealing the breath from my lungs. Pine, not the cultivated garden variety, but wild mountain pine, sharp and clean. Winter storm, the electric charge in the air before lightning strikes, and underneath it all, something ancient and untamed that called to the deepest part of me, the part I had locked away 5 years ago and sworn never to release again. My wolf surged inside me, erupting from the hibernation I had forced her into. She didn't wait gradually. She exploded, howling with recognition, clawing at my insides with desperate need. I staggered back a step, one hand clutching the windowsill for support, the other pressed against my chest as if I could physically hold back what was happening. No, this couldn't be. Not now. Not him. Not possible. But the mate bond didn't care about my protests. It was there, undeniable and absolute, pulling between us like a golden thread I could almost see shimmering in the moonlight. The moon goddess had chosen. And when she chooses mortals, even Luna Queens, don't get a say in the matter. I saw the exact moment recognition hit him too. His storm-gray eyes widened, his pupils dilating until they were nearly black. His nostrils flared as he scented me in return, whatever I smelled like to him. It affected him just as violently. I watched his hands clench into fists at his sides, watched the muscles in his jaw tighten as he fought for control. A low sound escaped his throat, half groan, half growl, the sound of a wolf finding what it didn't know it was searching for. "You need to leave," I said, but my voice came out breathless and weak, betraying everything I was trying to deny. "Now, before anyone discovers you here, they'll kill you for this." He didn't move. "I know the risk." "Then why did you come?" "Because you winked at me." He took one step closer. Just one, but it felt like he'd crossed an ocean. The mate bond pulled tighter, singing between us with an intensity that made my knees weak. "Because for 5 years I've watched you fade away, becoming more ghost than woman, and tonight I saw you laugh, really laugh, and I couldn't stay away." "You don't know anything about me," I protested, even as my wolf screamed at me to stop talking and just go to him. "You're a jester, an entertainer. You performed once at my court." "I'm not just a jester," he interrupted quietly. "And you know that, don't you? You feel it. You smell it on me. I'm more than what I showed you tonight." He was right. Every instinct I possessed told me this man was no simple court fool. The way he moved, fluid and controlled, like a trained warrior. The way he spoke, educated, refined, with the diction of nobility. The way he held himself, confident, powerful, dangerous. This was someone used to command, to authority, playing at being harmless. "Then who are you?" I demanded, trying to find my footing in this conversation, trying to regain some semblance of control, even as everything inside me spiraled wildly out of my grasp. "Does it matter?" He took another step. "Would knowing my name, my title, my bloodline change what's happening between us right now? Would it make the mate bond less real? It would help me understand why the moon goddess would bind me to a stranger." My voice broke on the last word. I had a mate. I was bonded. Kieran was my destiny, and he's gone. And I've spent 5 years learning how to be half of nothing instead of half of something. I don't want this. I don't want to feel this again. Then send me away. His voice was gentle now, heartbreakingly gentle. "Tell me to leave, and I will. I'll disappear from your kingdom, and you'll never see me again. You can go back to being frozen, to being the ghost queen everyone whispers about. You can choose numbness over feeling, but you have to actually choose it. You have to say the words." I opened my mouth to do exactly that, to order him out, to reject this impossible bond, to return to my safe, empty existence, but the words wouldn't come. Because standing there in the moonlight, feeling my wolf alive and desperate for the first time in years, I realized something terrifying. I didn't want to be frozen anymore. I was so tired of being numb. I was so goddamn tired of existing without living. "I can't," I whispered. "Moon goddess, help me, I can't send you away." Something in his expression shattered and rebuilt itself in the same moment. Relief, hunger, tenderness, all of it flashing across his face before he locked it down again. "Then may I stay? Just to talk. I won't touch you if you don't want me to, but let me stay, Emberly. Let me give you this one night where you don't have to be the frozen Luna, where you can just be a woman talking to a man who sees you." The sound of my name in his mouth undid something inside me. No one called me Emberly anymore. It was always Your Majesty or my Queen or Luna. My name had died with Kieran, but hearing it now from this stranger's lips felt like resurrection. "What's your name?" I asked. "Your real name." He hesitated, and I saw him weighing truth against safety. "Rowan," he finally said. "Rowan Ashbourne. Ashbourne." The name meant nothing to me, but the way he said it, like it carried weight, history, significance, told me it should. And what is Rowan Ashbourne doing pretending to be a court jester in my kingdom? Looking for something I lost a long time ago. His eyes never left mine. And maybe, just maybe, looking for you. We talked. Moon goddess. We talked for hours. He pulled a chair close to the window where I stood, maintaining a careful distance even though every cell in my body screamed for him to close it. And he told me things about philosophy and poetry, about the nature of grief and the price of duty, about distant kingdoms and the politics that shaped them. He quoted scholars I'd studied in my youth and poets whose words I'd forgotten. He spoke of battle strategy and diplomatic theory with the ease of someone trained in both. This was no jester. This was an educated man, possibly noble-born, certainly trained in arts that went far beyond entertainment. And as he spoke, I found myself responding, engaging in a way I hadn't in years. My mind, which I'd allowed to atrophy in my grief, suddenly came alive, racing to keep up with his, challenging him, debating him, finding joy in intellectual sparring I'd forgotten existed. "You studied at the Northern Academy," I said at one point, recognition dawning. "The way you structure your arguments, that's Master Cornelius's teaching style. I'd recognize it anywhere." Rowan smiled, surprised and pleased. "You studied there too?" "Before I was married. My father believed in education for all his children, daughters included. The council thought it was a waste, but he insisted." The memory hurt, sharp and bittersweet. "I haven't thought about those days in so long." "What else haven't you thought about?" His voice was soft, coaxing. "What else did you bury along with your mate?" "Everything," I wanted to say. I buried everything. My joy, my curiosity, my passion, my anger, my hope. I buried the woman I was and became the monument everyone needed. But instead of saying it, I showed him. I started talking. Really talking. For the first time in 5 years. About Kieran, yes, but also about the woman I'd been before him. The princess who loved philosophy and poetry, who snuck into the library at midnight to read forbidden texts, who dreamed of traveling to distant lands and seeing everything the world had to offer. Rowan listened like listening was an art form. He didn't interrupt, didn't offer hollow platitudes, didn't try to fix me. He just listened, and in his listening, I found permission to remember, to acknowledge that I had been someone before I became the frozen Luna. That grief hadn't erased my past. I had done that myself, thinking it would hurt less if I forgot. "I used to write poetry," I admitted at some point, the confession feeling dangerous. Terrible, melodramatic poetry about wolves and moons and destiny. Kieran loved it. He'd beg me to read it to him even when I was embarrassed by how bad it was. "Do you still write?" "No. I haven't written a word since he died. It felt like betrayal somehow. Like if I created something beautiful, I was saying his death didn't matter. So I stopped." "That's not betrayal," Rowan said quietly. "That's burial. You didn't just bury him, Emberly. You buried yourself alive alongside him." The truth of it hit me like a blow. He was right. I had climbed into that grave with Kieran and pulled the earth over both of us. And everyone, the council, the court, the kingdom, had let me do it. They'd encouraged it even. The grieving widow was easier to control than the passionate woman I'd been. "I don't know how to climb back out," I whispered. "I don't know if I remember how to be that woman anymore." "Then don't be that woman." He leaned forward, his eyes intense. "Be whoever you are now. Someone new. Someone shaped by grief but not defined by it. Someone who's allowed to laugh at a jester's joke and feel alive again without permission." The mate bond hummed between us, growing stronger with every word exchanged. I could feel it wrapping around my heart, weaving itself into my soul, claiming space that had been empty for so long. And the terrifying part was how right it felt, how natural, as if this connection had always existed, waiting dormant until we found each other. "I'm afraid," I admitted. "The mate bond. It's supposed to be once in a lifetime. Kieran was my mate. How can there be another? How can the moon goddess give me this when I already had my chance?" "Maybe she didn't give you another chance." Rowan's voice was gentle but firm. "Maybe she's giving you a different gift, not a replacement, but a continuation. A new chapter in a story you thought was finished." He stood then, finally closing the distance between us. I could feel the heat radiating from his body, smell his scent surrounding me like a living thing. My wolf was going absolutely wild, throwing herself against my control, begging me to close the final space, to touch him, to claim him. "May I?" Rowan asked, raising one hand slowly. I nodded, not trusting my voice. His fingers touched my cheek, and it was like lightning striking. The mate bond flared between us, golden and brilliant. So intense I saw it rather than felt it. My skin ignited where he touched me, nerve endings coming alive after years of numbness. I gasped, my hands coming up to grip his wrists. Whether to push him away or pull him closer, I honestly didn't know. "Emberly," he breathed, and my name sounded like a prayer. "Tell me to stop. Tell me this is too fast, too much, too impossible. Give me a reason to walk away." But I couldn't, because this wasn't too fast. It was 5 years too slow. This wasn't too much. It was exactly enough, and impossible had stopped mattering the moment I winked at him and set all of this in motion. "Don't walk away," I said, my voice steady despite the chaos inside me. "Stay. Please stay." What happened next was inevitable. The claiming, the coming together of two souls the moon goddess had bound. But it wasn't wild or desperate or mindless. It was slow, reverent, conscious. Every touch deliberate, every kiss a question asked and answered. He worshipped me like I was something sacred, and I discovered muscles I'd forgotten I had, responses I'd thought died with QUEEN. But when I arched my neck, offering the traditional marking spot, the place where a mate's bite would seal the bond permanently, Rowan pulled back. His canines had descended, ready to complete the ritual, but he didn't bite. Instead, he pressed his forehead to mine, breathing hard, fighting his wolf's instinct with visible effort. "Not yet," he said roughly. "Not like this. Not in secret. In the dark. Hidden away like something shameful. But the bond will hold without the mark. When I mark you, Emberly, it will be when you're free to choose me openly. When you can stand before your kingdom and declare this bond without fear. I won't trap you with a bite you can't take back. I won't be another chain on the woman who's been in chains for too long." I wanted to argue. My wolf was howling in frustration, demanding completion. But looking into his storm-gray eyes, seeing the iron will it took for him to deny his own instincts for my sake, it broke something in me, and healed something else simultaneously. This wasn't just desire. This was respect. This was love, maybe. Or the beginning of it. We lay together as the moon tracked across the sky, talking in whispers, learning each other's bodies and stories in equal measure. He told me about the battle where QUEEN died. Because he'd been there, he admitted. He'd seen my mate fall, and had carried his body home himself. He'd seen my grief from a distance, and had never forgotten the albino Luna, who screamed her anguish at the moon. I felt the mate bond then, he confessed. Distant, faint, but there. I knew you were mine even as you mourned another, but you were so lost in grief, I wouldn't approach you. So I waited. I trained. I traveled. I learned everything I could about you. And when I felt the bond growing stronger, felt you beginning to wake from your frozen sleep, I came. Disguised, yes, because I needed to know you, needed you to know me, without titles and politics in the way. You've been waiting 5 years for me to be ready? The thought staggered me. I would have waited 50. He kissed my temple. Some things are worth waiting for. Dawn came too soon, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Rowan dressed silently, and I watched from my bed, memorizing every line of him. In the growing light, I could see details I'd missed in moonlight, scars that spoke of battle, muscles that spoke of hard training, an aura of controlled power that no jester would possess. "I have to go," he said reluctantly, "before the castle wakes, before anyone discovers." "I know." I rose, wrapping the silk sheet around myself, and went to him. "When will I see you again?" "Tonight, if you'll have me." "Tomorrow. Every night you'll allow it, for however long I can stay before they send me away." He cupped my face in his hands. "I love you, Emberly Wildfang. I've loved you from a distance for 5 years, and now that I've held you, I'll love you until my last breath. But I need you to know, I won't be the reason you lose your throne. If loving me costs you everything, I'll leave. I'll disappear. I'll give you up if it means you keep your power. Don't," I said fiercely. "Don't you dare make that decision for me. I've had 5 years of people making my decisions. If I choose you, if I claim this bond, it will be my choice. Do you understand?" He smiled, brilliant and heartbreaking. "My fierce Luna. Yes, I understand." He left through the secret passage he'd used to enter, and I stood alone in my chambers as the sun rose fully. I walked to my mirror and stared at my reflection, searching for the ghost I'd been yesterday. She wasn't there. The woman looking back at me had color in her cheeks, pink from exertion and pleasure and life. Her eyes were bright, alert, alive. Her lips were swollen from kisses, her hair mussed, her skin glowing. She looked like someone who'd been touched, claimed, wanted. She looked like someone who'd remembered she was more than grief. My wolf stretched inside me, content and powerful, no longer hibernating but fully awake. And with her awakening came a rush of power I'd forgotten I possessed. Luna power, ancient and strong, the birthright of my albino bloodline. I'd let it atrophy, let it sleep, but now I felt dangerous. Now I felt capable. Now I felt like the queen I was supposed to be instead of the puppet I'd allowed myself to become. I was still standing there, still marveling at my transformation, when the pounding came on my door. Urgent, insistent, panicked. My heart seized. Something was wrong. Something had happened. Mira burst in without waiting for permission, her face pale as death, her hands shaking. She took one look at me, disheveled, glowing, obviously changed, and her eyes went wide with horror. "My queen," she gasped. "The council. They're demanding an emergency meeting immediately. She swallowed hard. "They know about last night. Someone saw him leaving your chambers. They know." The bottom dropped out of my world. Of course they knew. I'd been foolish to think we could keep this secret, that one night of happiness wouldn't have consequences. The council had eyes everywhere, spies in every shadow. They'd probably known the moment Rowan entered my room. "How bad is it?" I asked, my voice surprisingly steady, despite the fear coursing through me. "Bad, my queen. Very bad. Counselor Aldrich is calling for the jester's arrest. They're saying he compromised you, that he took advantage of your grief, that he's a threat to the throne." Tears streaked down Mira's face. "They want blood. They want to make an example of him, and they want you to denounce him publicly or face accusations yourself." Of course they did, because this was the perfect opportunity for them. My relationship with Rowan gave them exactly the ammunition they needed to fully control me. Denounce him and prove I was still the obedient widow they could manipulate, or defend him and be labeled unstable, unfit, in need of their guidance. They thought they had me trapped. They thought I would choose the throne over the mate bond, that I would sacrifice Rowan to maintain their version of peace. They were about to learn just how wrong they were. "Tell them I'll attend the meeting," I said, my voice cold and clear. "Tell them their Luna Queen will address the council within the hour. And Mira," I caught her hand, "tell them she's done being frozen." I dressed in full ceremonial regalia, the heavy purple and silver gown that marked me as Luna Queen. The crown, not the simple circlet, but the actual crown with its lunar motifs and ancient wolf runes, settled on my white hair like a weight I'd forgotten how to carry. My hands shook as Mira fastened the clasps, but I forced them still. The council would be looking for weakness. They would be circling like the predators they were, searching for the killing blow. I couldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing me afraid, but Moon Goddess, I was terrified. The walk to the council chamber felt like a death march. Every servant I passed looked away, unable to meet my eyes. Word had spread, as it always did in a castle full of gossips and spies. The frozen Luna had taken a lover. The grieving widow had fallen from grace. The scandal was delicious, I'm sure, for those who had nothing better to do than tear down a woman who'd already been through hell. The guards at the council chamber doors opened them without a word, their faces carefully blank. I stepped inside, chin high, shoulders back, every inch the queen they seemed to have forgotten I was. All 10 of them were already seated around the massive oak table, my table, in my castle, in my kingdom, but not one of them stood when I entered. That breach of protocol was deliberate, calculated to remind me of my place, or rather, the place they thought I should occupy. Submissive, manageable, broken. Counselor Aldrich sat at the far end, in the seat that should have been mine. His silver hair was immaculately groomed, his ceremonial robes perfect, his expression a mask of disappointed authority. He looked like a father about to punish a wayward child, and the comparison made rage flicker through my fear. "Your Majesty," he said, and even those 2 words dripped with condescension. "Please, sit." He gestured to a chair placed in front of the table, facing them. Not at the table, as was my right. In front of it, like a supplicant, like someone being judged rather than someone who should be doing the judging. I remained standing. "I prefer not to. This isn't a request." Counselor Brennan's voice was sharp. He was younger than Aldrich, ambitious and cruel, in a way the older man had learned to hide better. "Sit down. We have serious matters to discuss." "Then discuss them," I said coolly. "I'm listening." The temperature in the room dropped. I watched the 10 of them exchange glances, recalculating their strategy. They'd expected the frozen Luna, compliant, defeated, easy to control. They hadn't expected resistance. Good. Let them scramble. Aldrich stood slowly, his wolf presence pushing against mine, trying to force my submission through sheer dominance. It might have worked a week ago, a day ago even, but I'd spent last night wrapped in my mate's arms, feeling my wolf wake from 5 years of forced hibernation. I was no longer the broken thing they'd been manipulating. "You have disgraced yourself," Aldrich began, his voice carrying the weight of practiced rhetoric. "You have brought shame upon the memory of Alpha Kieran. Blessed be his name. You have scandalized this court, and this kingdom with your inappropriate, reckless behavior. Be specific, I said. What exactly have I done that warrants this emergency meeting? You know exactly what you've done. Counselor Marcus spoke up, his face flushed with righteous anger. You winked at a common entertainer in front of the entire court. You, Moon Goddess, forgive us for having to speak such words, allowed that same entertainer into your private chambers, into your bed. My private chambers are private, I said evenly, even as humiliation burned through me. What happens within them is no one's business but my own. You are Luna Queen. Brennan slammed his hand on the table. There's nothing private about you. Every action you take reflects on this kingdom. Every decision you make affects thousands of wolves who depend on your leadership. And you chose to spread your legs for a jester? The crudeness of it stole my breath. I'd known they were angry. But this was beyond anger. This was hatred, barely contained. And underneath it, I recognized something else. Fear. They were afraid of losing control over me. And fear made men cruel. How dare you speak to me that way? I said, my voice low and dangerous. I am your queen. Are you? Aldrich moved around the table, circling me like a wolf stalking wounded prey. Because a queen would not behave as you have. A queen would honor her late mate's memory. A queen would think of her duty, her responsibility, her kingdom. But you're just a grief-broken woman who can't control her base urges. Each word was designed to cut, to wound, to reduce me to nothing. And they were working. I felt tears burning behind my eyes, felt shame crawling up my throat. Maybe they were right. Maybe I was broken, weak, unfit. Maybe Rowan had been a mistake, a moment of madness born from 5 years of suffocating loneliness. We have compiled a list of your transgressions, Counselor Thorne said, unrolling a scroll with exaggerated ceremony. First, the public display of inappropriate affection toward a servant. I winked at him. I interrupted. I didn't kiss him. I didn't touch him. I winked in gratitude for making me laugh. That's hardly... It was unseemly. Aldrich cut me off. For a widow in mourning to show such familiarity with a male who is not her mate. Second, you allowed this entertainer into your private chambers after midnight. Do you deny this? I wanted to. I wanted to lie, to claim it was a misunderstanding, that nothing had happened. But I'd never been good at lying. And besides, why should I? I'd done nothing wrong. I'd found my mate. The moon goddess herself had chosen him for me. That should be celebrated, not condemned. But looking at their faces, hard, judgmental, disgusted, I knew they would never see it that way. I don't deny it, I said quietly. She doesn't deny it, Brennan repeated, voice dripping with mock amazement. Do you hear that? Our Luna Queen admits to fornication with a common jester, and she shows no remorse. He's not... I started, but Aldrich spoke over me. Third, you have neglected your duties to this kingdom. You refuse suitable marriage proposals. You refuse to produce heirs. You spend your days locked in your chambers, lost in grief, while we manage the kingdom you're supposed to be ruling. And now, when we finally thought you might be recovering, you throw away what little dignity you had left on a man whose name we don't even know. The truth of that last part hit me like a fist. They were right. I didn't even know Rowan's full story. I knew his name, or the name he'd given me, and I knew how he made me feel. But I knew nothing of his past, his family, his true identity. I'd been so desperate for connection, so starved for feeling, that I'd given myself to a stranger. Where is he? I asked, changing tactics. Where is Rowan? The jester, Aldrich said, deliberately using the dismissive title, has been taken into custody. He is currently being held in the dungeons awaiting trial. My heart stopped. Trial? For what crime? Assault on the Luna Queen, Marcus said promptly. Coercion. Taking advantage of a woman in a vulnerable mental state, entering royal chambers without permission. Choose whichever you prefer. They all carry the death penalty. He didn't assault me. The words burst out of me, desperate and raw. I invited him. I wanted him there. You can't execute him for something I consented to. Can't we? Aldrich's smile was cold. You've just admitted that your judgment is compromised, that you're making decisions based on emotion rather than reason. That makes you unfit to give consent. Which means this man, this nobody who somehow managed to manipulate our grieving Luna, is guilty of the highest treason. And the punishment for treason is death. They had me. Moon Goddess. They had me trapped so perfectly. If I defended Rowan, I was admitting to inappropriate behavior. If I claimed my judgment was sound, they'd say I was deliberately bringing scandal to the throne. Either way, I lost. Either way, they maintained control. "What do you want from me?" I asked, hating how defeated I sounded. The 10 of them exchanged satisfied looks. This was the moment they'd been waiting for. The moment when the frozen Luna finally, completely, broke. "We want you to make a public statement," Aldrich said smoothly. "You will stand before the court and declare that you were deceived, that this jester took advantage of your grief and confusion. You will condemn him for his crimes and support his execution. And then," he paused dramatically, "you will seriously consider the marriage proposals we've presented. You will choose an appropriate alpha mate from among our carefully selected candidates, and you will fulfill your duty to produce an heir for this kingdom. And if I refuse, then we will be forced to question your competence to rule." Brennan's voice was almost gleeful. "We will call for a formal evaluation of your mental state. We will present evidence of your erratic behavior, your inability to make sound decisions, your neglect of your duties, and we will recommend that you be placed under regency, for your own protection, of course, until such time as you recover your faculties. They would take my throne. They would strip me of the last shred of power I possessed and install themselves as my jailers. And there would be nothing I could do about it because they controlled everything. The military, the treasury, the courts. I was one woman against 10 wolves who'd been consolidating power for 5 years while I drowned in grief. "I need time," I said, my voice barely a whisper, "to consider." "Time?" Aldrich laughed. "My dear Luna, time is a luxury you no longer possess. The jester's trial is set for tomorrow at noon. You have until then to make your decision. Denounce him and save yourself, or defend him and lose everything. Choose wisely." They dismissed me then, waving me away like a servant who'd outlived her usefulness. I walked out of that chamber with my spine straight and my face blank, but inside I was screaming. Inside I was dying. The moment I reached my chambers, the facade cracked. I collapsed against the closed door, sliding down until I was sitting on the floor, my elaborate gown pooling around me. Mira rushed to my side, but I couldn't speak. I couldn't move. I could barely breathe. What had I done? I'd gambled everything. My throne, my power, my future, on one night with a man I barely knew, and now he was going to die for it. They would execute him, and it would be my fault, because I'd been too weak to resist the mate bond, too desperate for connection, too selfish to think about the consequences. "My queen," Mira said gently, "breathe. You need to breathe." I sucked in air, but it felt like drowning. The mate bond pulled at me, stretching tight between my chest and wherever they were holding Rowan. I could feel his presence, distant but there, like a golden thread connecting us across stone and distance. Was he afraid? Was he hurt? Could he feel me too? Or was I alone in this agony? "I can't reach him," I gasped. "The bond, it's too new, not complete. I can feel him, but I can't hear him, can't talk to him. He's alone in those dungeons, and I can't—" "My queen, listen to me." Mira gripped my shoulders, forcing me to focus on her face. "There's something you need to know, something I discovered." "What? What could possibly matter now?" "The jester, Rowan, he's not who he appears to be. I had one of the guards ask questions discreetly. His name is Rowan Ashbourne, and—" "I know his name," I interrupted bitterly. "He told me that much, at least. But did he tell you who he is?" Mira's eyes were wide, urgent. "Ashbourne isn't just any name, my queen. It's the family name of the Duke of the Northern Territories. And Rowan is the Duke's youngest son." The world tilted. "What?" "He's nobility. High nobility. His father controls the largest military force outside of the capital. His eldest brother is married to the princess of the Eastern Kingdoms. His family has more wealth and power than half the council combined." Mira's words came faster now, tripping over each other. "But there's more. 5 years ago, Rowan Ashbourne was a decorated war captain. He served under Alpha Kieran. He was there when your mate died. He carried the body home himself." I stopped breathing entirely. The room spun around me, memories and revelations colliding in my mind. Rowan had told me he'd been at that battle, that he'd known Kieran, but he'd made it sound like he was just another soldier, not a captain. Not the Duke's son, not someone with enough power and influence to potentially challenge the council. "Why?" I whispered. "Why would someone like that disguise himself as a jester?" "I don't know," Mira admitted, "but there are rumors. Stories that after he returned from the war, he disappeared for years. Some say he was training, studying, preparing for something. Others say he was searching for something he'd lost." She hesitated. "Or someone. The mate bond. He'd said he felt it 5 years ago, the day Kieran died. He'd waited, watched, prepared, and then he'd come to me disguised as someone harmless, someone the council wouldn't see as a threat. But why? What was his game? Was this all some elaborate political maneuver? Had he seduced me as part of a larger plan? No, I couldn't believe that. The mate bond didn't lie. What I'd felt last night, what we'd shared, that was real. The moon goddess didn't make mistakes when she bound souls together. But if Rowan was truly the Duke's son, if he carried that kind of power and influence, why hadn't he revealed himself? Why let the council arrest him? Why not use his family's name to protect himself, unless he was protecting me? Unless revealing his identity would somehow make things worse. There's one more thing, Mira said quietly. The Duke received word this morning about his son's arrest. He's mobilizing his forces. By tomorrow there will be an army outside our gates, demanding Rowan's release. My blood ran cold. An army? The council doesn't know yet. Or if they do, they're not saying. But if the Duke's forces clash with the capital's garrison, my queen, it would be civil war. The kingdom would tear itself apart. And it would all be because of me. Because I'd winked at a man in a jester's costume. Because I'd let him into my bed. Because I'd been too weak to resist a fate the moon goddess had supposedly decreed. I pressed my hands to my face, feeling tears leak through my fingers. This was impossible. Every choice led to disaster. If I denounced Rowan, I'd break the mate bond and doom myself to another lifetime of frozen existence. But the kingdom would remain stable. If I defended him, the council would strip me of power, and civil war would erupt when his father came to rescue him. Either way, people would die. Either way, I lost. What do I do? I asked Mira, my voice broken. How do I fix this? She was quiet for a long moment. Then softly, I don't think you can fix it, my queen. I think you have to choose which disaster you're willing to live with. The disaster of losing yourself, or the disaster of fighting for what the moon goddess gave you. I looked up at her, this woman who'd been my only friend through 5 years of grief, and saw something in her eyes I hadn't noticed before. Hope. She actually had hope that I would fight. They'll destroy me, I whispered. The council. They'll take everything. Maybe, Mira agreed. Or maybe, just maybe, you'll destroy them first. The thought should have been terrifying. Instead, it lit a spark in the frozen wasteland of my chest, a tiny flame of possibility, of rebellion, of choice. I had until noon tomorrow to decide. Denounce my mate and save my throne, or claim my mate and burn everything down. The moon goddess had given me Rowan for a reason. She'd woken me from 5 years of death for a purpose. And maybe, just maybe, that purpose was bigger than I'd imagined. Maybe it wasn't just about healing my broken heart. Maybe it was about breaking the chains that had held me captive since the moment they'd placed that crown on my head and told me who I had to be. I stood slowly, wiping my tears, feeling something shift inside me. The frozen Luna was cracking. What would emerge from beneath the ice? I didn't know yet, but I was about to find out. Mira, I said, my voice steadier than it had been all day. I need you to get a message to someone. Can you do that? Of course, my queen. To whom? I smiled, and it felt dangerous. To the Duke of the Northern Territories. Tell him his son's Luna Queen requests an audience. And tell him, I paused, choosing my words carefully. Tell him the chess pieces are almost in position. The castle's secret passages were older than memory, carved into the stone foundations by the first wolf kings who understood that sometimes a ruler needed to move unseen. I discovered them as a curious princess decades ago, memorized their twists and turns, then promptly forgotten about them during my years of frozen grief. But tonight, with Mira's hand-drawn map clutched in my trembling fingers, and a hooded cloak hiding my distinctive white hair, I became a ghost in my own home. The passages smelled of damp earth and ancient stone, lit only by the single candle I carried. Each step took me deeper into the castle's bones, away from the gilded halls where the council slept soundly, confident in their control over me. They thought they'd won. They thought I would choose survival over defiance, the throne over my mate. They'd calculated every angle except the one that mattered most. I was done being their puppet. The dungeons lay beneath the eastern tower, far from the main living quarters where noble prisoners might be kept. These cells were for the truly condemned, the ones the council wanted hidden away where screams wouldn't carry. My stomach twisted thinking of Rowan down here, locked in darkness, waiting for an execution that would come with the sunrise if I didn't stop it. The passage opened behind a loose stone in the dungeon corridor. I pressed against it carefully, listening for guards. 2 sets of footsteps, walking their patrol route with the bored precision of men who didn't expect trouble. I waited until they passed, counting their steps, then slipped out into the shadows. Finding Rowan's cell wasn't difficult. He was the only prisoner down here tonight. They'd put him in the worst one, naturally. The cell at the end where water dripped constantly from the ceiling and rats scurried in corners. Where the bars were thick as a man's wrist and spelled with silver to prevent shifting. Where they put wolves they wanted to break before killing. He was sitting against the far wall when I approached, his head tilted back, eyes closed. Even in the dim torchlight, I could see the bruises darkening his face, the split lip, the way he favored his ribs when he breathed. They'd hurt him. Of course they had. The council wouldn't pass up an opportunity to punish someone who dared touch their carefully controlled Luna Queen. "Rowan," I whispered, pressing against the bars. His eyes flew open, storm gray even in the darkness, and the mate bond flared between us so intensely I gasped. He was on his feet in an instant, crossing the cell in 3 strides, his hands wrapping around the bars inches from mine. Emberly. My name on his lips sounded like a prayer and a curse together. "Moon Goddess, you shouldn't be here. If they catch you, I don't care." And I meant it. Standing there looking at him, beaten and imprisoned because of me, I realized I'd run out of fear. Or maybe I'd just run out of the capacity to care about my own safety when his life hung in the balance. "Are you hurt badly?" "I've had worse." His smile was crooked, painful. "Though I'll admit, your council's interrogation methods are creative. They wanted to know who sent me, who I was working for, what my plans were for seducing you." He paused. "I told them the truth, that the Moon Goddess sent me, that I work for no one but fate, and that my only plan was to make you smile again. They didn't believe me. I need you to tell me the truth now." My voice was steady despite the chaos inside me. All of it. No more games, no more secrets. "Who are you really, Rowan Ashbourne?" Something flickered in his eyes. Resignation, maybe. Or relief. "You found out. That you're the Duke's son? That you're nobility? Not some wandering entertainer?" "Yes, I found out. What I don't understand is why you lied. Why you came here disguised when you could have—" I stopped, realization dawning. "You could have demanded an audience with me as yourself. Your family's power. Your father's influence. The council couldn't have denied you. But you came as a jester instead. Why?" He was quiet for a long moment, his fingers twitching against the bars, like he wanted to touch me but couldn't quite reach. "Because I needed you to know me," he finally said. "Not my title, not my family name, not the political alliance I could offer. Just me, the man who makes you laugh, who quotes poetry badly, who can't juggle worth a damn but tries anyway because it might make you smile. Tell me everything," I said. "From the beginning. I deserve to know who my mate really is." So he told me. And Moon Goddess. The truth was so much bigger than I'd imagined. Rowan Ashbourne was indeed the Duke's youngest son, but not his favorite. He'd been the spare, the one not needed for succession or important marriages, which had given him freedom his brothers never enjoyed. He'd studied military strategy at the Northern Academy. Yes, under Master Cornelius, same as me. Then joined the Royal Army as a captain, which meant 5 years ago, when war came to our borders, he'd served under Kieran's command. "I admired him," Rowan said quietly. "Your mate. He was a brilliant alpha, a natural leader, the kind of king this kingdom deserved." His voice roughened. "When he fell in battle, I was 20 feet away. I couldn't reach him in time, couldn't save him, but I could carry him home. I could give him that dignity at least. You brought Kieran back to me." The words came out broken. All this time, I'd never known the name of the soldier who'd carried my mate's body through enemy lines, who'd risked his own life to ensure Kieran came home. "You gave me the chance to say goodbye, and I saw what it did to you." His eyes held such pain. "I saw you at the funeral, white as death, screaming at the moon until your voice gave out. I saw you try to throw yourself into his grave. I saw the light go out of you, and He stopped, swallowed hard. That's when I felt it. The mate bond. Faint, distant, but there, like a whisper in my soul saying, "She's yours, and you're hers, but not yet." My breath caught. "You've known for 5 years?" I felt the pull, yes, but the bond doesn't fully form until both wolves acknowledge it. And you were so buried in grief, you couldn't feel anything. I didn't blame you. How could I? You just lost your true mate. The idea that the Moon Goddess would give you another so soon seemed like cruelty. He pressed his forehead against the bars. So I waited. I gave you time to grieve, to heal. I went back to the Northern Territories and trained, studied, learned everything I could about you and this kingdom, and I watched from a distance as the council slowly, methodically stole your power. What do you mean? They isolated you. His voice turned hard. Every servant loyal to you was dismissed and replaced with their spies. Every advisor who supported you was transferred or bought off. They controlled who you saw, what information reached you, which decisions required your approval. They kept you locked in grief, encouraged your mourning, because a broken queen was easier to control than a powerful Luna. The truth of it hit me like a physical blow. I'd thought my isolation was natural, a consequence of my grief, but it had been orchestrated, maintained, used against me. 6 months ago, I felt the bond strengthen. Rowan continued. Like you were finally waking up, starting to feel again. That's when I knew. I had to come to you, but not as myself, not as the Duke's son, because then the council would see me as a political threat and keep us apart. I needed to be someone harmless, someone beneath their notice, so I could get close to you, so you could know me without all the weight of titles and alliances crushing what we could be. The jester, I breathed. You became a jester so you could reach me. I became a jester because I needed you to laugh, he corrected gently. Because I'd seen you in ashes and I wanted to see you in joy. Because the mate bond told me you were mine. But I needed you to choose me, really choose me. Not just accept an arranged marriage to another powerful alpha. His hand finally found mine through the bars, his fingers curling around mine. I love you, Emberly. Not because fate decreed it, but because you're brilliant, and broken, and brave. Because you've survived 5 years of hell and you're still standing. Because when you laugh, the whole world feels like it's been waiting for that sound. Tears streaked down my face. They're going to kill you tomorrow. The council. They've scheduled your execution for noon. I know. Your father, Mira says he's mobilizing an army. If he attacks to free you, it'll start a civil war. I know that too. Rowan's thumb stroked across my knuckles, which is why you need to let me die. What? I jerked back. No. Absolutely not. Listen to me. His voice was urgent now. If I die, I'm a martyr, a tragic victim of a jealous council. My father will have justification to move against them, but not against you. The kingdom can be saved, the council removed, and you'll be free to rule as you should have been all along. Without you, I said flatly, free, but alone. Again, you'll find another mate eventually. The moon goddess. Don't. I cut him off, fury rising through my grief. Don't you dare tell me the moon goddess will provide another mate. She gave me you. She woke me from 5 years of death for you. And now you want me to let them murder you, so what? So I can go back to being the frozen Luna? So I can spend another lifetime pretending I'm whole when half my soul is missing? Emberly. No. My voice echoed off the dungeon walls. I'm done sacrificing myself for politics. I'm done being what everyone else needs me to be. You asked me to choose you, Rowan. So I'm choosing you, which means I'm also choosing to fight. His eyes widened. You can't fight the council. They control everything. Do they? I leaned closer to the bars. Tell me what you learned while you were playing jester. You said they were stealing from the kingdom, making secret deals. Tell me everything. So he did. And Moon Goddess. It was worse than I'd imagined. For 5 years, while I'd been lost in grief, the council had been systematically looting the treasury. They'd made deals with rival kingdoms, selling trade routes and resources for personal profit. They'd raised taxes on the common wolves while exempting their own holdings. They'd executed or exiled anyone who questioned their authority. All in my name, using my seal on documents I never saw. They need you compliant, Rowan explained. They need you broken and controllable because if you ever woke up, if you ever actually looked at what they'd been doing, you could destroy them with a single decree. You're still Luna Queen, Emberly. Your word is law, but only if you're strong enough to enforce it. Then I'll get strong. The decision crystallized inside me, hard and sharp as diamond. I'll expose their crimes, rally those they've wronged, and I'll take back my kingdom. But I need allies. I need wolves willing to stand with me against the council. You have at least one. Mira's voice came from the shadows, making us both jump. She emerged into the torchlight, her usual timid demeanor replaced by something fierce. I've been gathering information for months, my queen. Names of servants they've dismissed, guards they've bypassed for promotion, nobles whose lands they've seized. You're not alone. There are dozens of us waiting for someone to lead us. Mira, I was there the night Alpha Kieran died, she continued quietly. I was your lady-in-waiting then too, remember? I watched you break, and I watched them use your grief as a weapon. I've been waiting 5 years for you to wake up and fight back. She smiled. Looks like it finally happened. Over the next hours, while Rowan rested in his cell and I kept watch, Mira brought me allies one by one through the secret passages. Captain Marcus of the Guard, whose brother the council had executed on false charges, Lady Sylvia, whose inheritance they'd stolen, Orin the blacksmith, whose daughter they'd forced into service to pay invented debts, and more, so many more, a quiet army of wolves who'd been waiting for their Luna to remember she was a queen. The trial is at noon, I told them as dawn approached. The council expects me to denounce Rowan and accept their control. Instead, I'm going to expose them. I'm going to present evidence of their crimes, and I'm going to demand justice. They won't let you, Captain Marcus warned. They control the guards, the courts, the military. They'll arrest you for treason before you finish speaking. Not if we're faster. I met his eyes. Not if we strike first. Can you secure the throne room before noon? Fill it with loyal guards instead of theirs? It'll be tight, but yes, most of the day guards are sympathetic to you. It's the council's pet soldiers we need to worry about. Then worry about them after I've had my say. I turned to the others. Spread the word. Tell every wolf in this kingdom that their Luna Queen demands their presence at noon. Tell them justice is coming. Tell them the frozen Luna is done being frozen. They dispersed into the pre-dawn darkness, energized by purpose, by hope. Mira stayed behind to guide me back through the passages, but first I returned to Rowan's cell one last time. You're really going to do this, he said. Not a question. A statement of fact laced with wonder and terror. I'm really going to do this. I reached through the bars, cupping his bruised face. And when it's over, when I've won, because I will win, Rowan, I swear it, I'm going to march down here myself and release you. And then I'm going to mark you in front of the entire kingdom, and no one will ever question my choices again. He turned his face into my palm, kissing the center. I love you. Whatever happens today, tell me tonight, I interrupted. When we're both free, when this nightmare is over, tell me then, and I'll believe it. The sky was lightening when I finally returned to my chambers, exhausted but electric with determination. I should have slept, conserved my strength for the battle ahead. Instead, I stood at my window watching the moon set and the sun rise, feeling my wolf stirring inside me with an intensity I hadn't experienced since before Kieran's death. She wanted out. My albino wolf, magnificent and powerful, had been caged for too long. She'd been suppressed, silenced, locked away because I couldn't bear the pain of feeling her without my mate's wolf to run beside her. But now she had another mate waiting. Now she had a purpose. Now she had rage enough to burn down anyone who stood between us and freedom. When full darkness fell again, barely 12 hours before the trial, I left the castle grounds alone, heading for the sacred grove where Luna Queens had conducted rituals since time immemorial. The moon was full, heavy and silver in the night sky, calling to my blood like a mother's voice. I stripped off my clothes and stood naked under her light, feeling her power wash over my skin. Then I did something I hadn't done in 5 years. I shifted. The transformation hurt. Moon goddess. It hurt like dying and being reborn simultaneously. My bones cracked and reformed. My skin split to reveal white fur beneath. My senses exploded with input I'd forgotten existed. And when I stood on 4 paws instead of 2 feet, when I lifted my muzzle to the moon and howled, it was like screaming 5 years of silence into the night. My wolf was enormous. Albino bloodline ran large anyway, but she was massive even by those standards. White as new snow, with ice blue eyes that glowed in the darkness, and a presence that radiated power like heat from a forge. She'd been trapped, starved, denied expression for so long that now, finally free, she was furious. She wanted to run to the dungeons, to tear apart the bars keeping our mate imprisoned. She wanted to rip out the throats of the 10 wolves who dared try to control us. She wanted blood and vengeance and validation, but I held her back, barely. Because tomorrow wasn't about violence. Tomorrow was about justice. Tomorrow was about showing the kingdom what their Luna Queen truly was when she stopped pretending to be weak. I shifted back as dawn colored the sky, my body aching but my spirit soaring. I was ready. For the first time in 5 years, I was completely, devastatingly ready. Mira helped me dress in silence, both of us understanding the gravity of what came next. But when she brought out the morning purple I'd worn every day for half a decade, I shook my head. "No more," I said firmly. "Find me something else. Silver and white, the colors of my bloodline." Her eyes widened. "My queen, the council will see that as exactly what it is," I finished. "A declaration that I'm done being their creature, that I'm done mourning what I lost instead of fighting for what I deserve. Find the dress, Mira." It's time the frozen Luna melted into something they never expected. She found it in the back of my wardrobe, a gown I'd worn once, years ago, before everything fell apart. Pure white silk that moved like water, with silver embroidery that caught light like captured stars. It had a high collar and long sleeves, modest by court standards, but the way it fit my body made me look less like a widow and more like a warrior queen preparing for battle. I left my white hair unbound, flowing down my back like a banner. I wore my crown, the full crown, not the modest circlet, and the Luna rings that marked my bloodline. I looked at myself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. She wasn't frozen anymore. She was ice-given form and fury, beautiful and deadly, a queen who'd remembered how to rule. "Are you ready?" Mira asked softly. "No," I admitted, "but I'm doing it anyway." The walk to the throne room felt eternal and instantaneous at once. I heard the murmur of voices as I approached. The entire court packed into the space, nobles and servants alike, drawn by curiosity about the scandalous Luna queen who'd taken a jester to her bed. They expected a humiliation, a public denouncement, the final breaking of a woman who'd already been broken. They were about to be very disappointed. The guards at the doors, Captain Marcus's men, thank the moon goddess, opened them wide at my approach. Every head in the throne room turned toward me, and in that moment, in the shocked silence that fell as they saw me dressed in defiance rather than mourning, I knew something fundamental had shifted. The frozen Luna was dead, and in her place stood someone they should have feared all along. I entered the throne room with my head high, my wolf prowling just beneath my skin, and my mate bond singing with anticipation. The council sat in their usual places, looking confident and cruel, but as I walked toward my throne, which I would reclaim today, or die trying, I saw the first flicker of uncertainty cross Aldrich's face. Good. Let him be uncertain. Let him wonder what happened to the broken widow he thought he controlled. Let him realize, too late, that he'd made one critical error. He'd let me find something worth fighting for, and a Luna queen with purpose was the most dangerous creature in any kingdom. Every step I took down that aisle was a declaration of war. The silk of my gown whispered against the stone floor, the sound carrying in the absolute silence that had fallen over the throne room. I could feel hundreds of eyes on me, nobles, servants, guards, all packed into this space expecting to witness my humiliation. Instead, they were seeing something they'd never imagined possible. The frozen Luna, melted and remade into something that made even the bravest wolves take an involuntary step back. My wolf prowled just beneath my skin, her power radiating from me in waves I made no effort to contain. For 5 years I'd suppressed her, locked her away, pretended she didn't exist because feeling her without Kieran's wolf beside her had been agony. But now she was unleashed, magnificent and furious, and every wolf in this room could sense what I'd forgotten. Albino bloodline didn't just mark royalty, it marked power. Raw, ancient, undeniable power that made lesser wolves instinctively lower their eyes. The council sat in their usual positions at the base of the dais where my throne stood. My throne, which I hadn't sat in since the day they'd convinced me I was too grief-stricken to rule. Aldrich in the center, flanked by his 9 conspirators, all of them dressed in their formal robes like judges preparing to pass sentence. They'd staged this perfectly. The throne room arranged like a courtroom, with Rowan's empty place in the center where the accused would stand, chains waiting to bind him, a executioner's block visible through the open doors behind them. They'd planned a spectacle, a public execution disguised as justice, with me as the grieving Luna who'd been seduced and manipulated, too weak to resist a clever predator. They'd written the script, assigned the roles, and expected me to play my part like the obedient puppet I'd been for 5 years. I reached the center of the room and stopped, not where they'd placed the accused spot, but directly in front of my throne. I didn't sit. I stood there, white and silver and radiating barely contained fury, and I watched realization dawn across Aldrich's face. He'd expected morning purple and downcast eyes. He'd gotten battle colors and a stare that could cut glass. "Counselor Aldrich," I said, my voice carrying to every corner of the room without needing to shout. Luna power amplified sound when wielded correctly. Another thing I'd forgotten. You called this assembly to conduct a trial, I believe? He recovered quickly. I'd give him that. Years of political maneuvering had taught him to mask surprise. Indeed, Your Majesty. The trial of the criminal who compromised your virtue and brought shame upon. There will be no trial. The words cracked through the air like lightning. Silence. Absolute shocked silence. Even Aldrich seemed momentarily stunned into speechlessness. I watched his mouth work soundlessly before he found his voice. I beg your pardon, Your Majesty, but this matter is too serious to... I said there will be no trial. I took a step forward, my wolf rising closer to the surface. Because the only criminals in this room are sitting in judgment instead of standing in chains. The throne room erupted. Gasps, murmurs, shocked exclamations. The council members jumped to their feet as one, their expressions ranging from outrage to barely concealed panic. Good. Let them panic. Let them feel a fraction of the fear they'd inflicted on me for 5 years. How dare you? Brennan snarled, his wolf showing in his eyes. You overstep yourself, Luna. We are your advisors, appointed to serve this kingdom, I interrupted coldly. Not to rob it blind while hiding behind my grief, not to make secret deals with rival territories for personal profit, not to execute loyal wolves on false charges so you could seize their lands and fortunes. Shall I continue, Councillor Brennan? Or would you like to tell this assembly yourself how much gold you've stolen from the royal treasury over the past 5 years? His face went white. You have no proof. These are wild accusations born from months of investigation. I cut him off again. From documents you thought safely hidden. From witnesses you thought too afraid to speak. From evidence so damning that even your bought judges couldn't ignore it. I turned to address the entire room. For 5 years, while I grieved, these 10 wolves systematically looted this kingdom. They raised taxes on common wolves to fill their own coffers. They sold trade routes to our enemies. They executed or exiled anyone who questioned their authority, all using my seal, my name, my power that I was too broken to defend. Lies. Marcus. No, Councillor Marcus. Not to be confused with Captain Marcus, who stood guard at the doors, slammed his hand on his chair. The ravings of a grief-addled woman who's been seduced by a common criminal. We've indulged your mourning out of respect for Alpha Kieran's memory, but clearly you've lost your capacity for rational thought. We'll need to consider a regency. A regency? I laughed, and the sound was sharp enough to draw blood. You mean you'll need to formalize the control you've been exercising illegally for 5 years? Strip away even the pretense that I'm anything more than your puppet? I shook my head. No, I don't think so. Aldrich stepped forward, trying to regain control of the situation. Your Majesty, please, you're distraught, confused. This jester has clearly manipulated you into believing his name, I said quietly, dangerously, is Rowan Ashbourne, son of the Duke of the Northern Territories, a decorated war captain who served under my late mate with honor and distinction, the wolf who carried Alpha Kieran's body home from the battlefield so I could say goodbye. And most importantly, I let my voice rise, let it fill every corner of the throne room. He is my fated mate, chosen by the moon goddess herself. Any who question this bond question divine will. The throne room exploded into chaos. Wolves shouting, nobles gasping, the council members trying to speak over each other. But through it all, I heard Aldrich's voice cutting like a blade. You have no proof, he roared. No evidence, no authority. We control the guards, the courts, the military. You're one woman against 10 wolves who've been running this kingdom while you wallowed in self-pity. Step down gracefully. Denounce this criminal, and we might let you keep your title. Refuse, and we'll remove you by force if necessary. The threat hung in the air, ugly and unmistakable. This was the moment, the point where I either backed down and returned to being their creature, or I burned it all down and rebuilt from the ashes. I smiled. You want proof? You want evidence? Then let me give it to you. I raised my hand, and Captain Marcus opened the side doors. Bring them in. They came in a steady stream. Servants the council had dismissed without cause. Guards they'd passed over for promotion because they wouldn't take bribes. Merchants whose businesses they'd destroyed. Minor nobles whose lands they'd seized. One by one, they entered the throne room, and one by one, they spoke. A kitchen maid who'd heard Brennan and Thorne discussing how to falsify trade documents. a guardsman who'd been ordered to plant evidence on an innocent wolf to justify execution, a merchant who'd been forced to pay bribes or lose his trading license, a lady whose father had been executed for treason after refusing to support the council's illegal taxation schemes. The testimony went on for over an hour. With each witness, I watched the council's confidence crumble. They tried to interrupt, to discredit, to threaten, but I had Captain Marcus and his loyal guards positioned throughout the room. Every time a counselor tried to silence a witness, they found themselves facing steel. "This is absurd," Aldrich finally roared when the last witness finished. "Hearsay and lies. You have no authority to conduct this mockery of justice. We are the council. You are nothing." My voice cut through his bluster like winter wind. "You have no legal authority. You never did. You exercised power only because I was too broken to stop you. But I'm not broken anymore. You can't remove us," Brennan snarled. "We control everything. The military answers to us. The guards answer to their Luna Queen," Captain Marcus said from his position by the door. "As we always have. As we always will." Around the room, guards shifted their positions, making it clear exactly where their loyalties lay. Aldrich's face twisted with rage and desperation. "This is treason. We'll call the Alpha Lords from the surrounding territories. We'll have you declared unfit. Have you removed? By all means, call them." I took another step forward. "Call the Duke of the Northern Territories. I'm sure he'd love to discuss why his son is in my dungeons facing execution for the crime of being my mate. Call the Eastern Kingdoms, whose princess is married to Rowan's brother. Call anyone you like, Aldrich. See how many powerful wolves rush to defend the council that's been robbing them through unfair trade agreements." I watched the blood drain from his face as he realized the trap he was in. If they called for help, they'd reveal their crimes to potential allies. If they didn't, they faced my justice alone. They'd been so confident in their control over me that they'd never considered what would happen if I woke up. "Now," I said softly, "I'm going to walk down to my dungeons. I'm going to personally release Rowan Ashbourne from his illegal imprisonment, and when I return with him, you're going to kneel before your Luna Queen and beg forgiveness for the treason you've committed. Or," I let the word hang, "you can refuse, and we'll see how long your control lasts when I call my wolf." "You wouldn't dare," Thorne whispered. "You haven't shifted in 5 years. You're weak, broken." I didn't let him finish. I let my wolf rise just enough for my eyes to bleed from ice blue to pure white, glowing with Luna power that hadn't been fully unleashed in generations. My aura exploded outward, ancient and overwhelming, the birthright of the albino bloodline that marked me as the most powerful Luna in a century. The effect was instantaneous. Every wolf in the room felt it. That primal recognition that they were in the presence of something greater, something that could crush them without effort. I watched strong alphas take involuntary steps backward. I heard gasps and whimpers from wolves who couldn't control their instinctive submission response. And I watched the council, these 10 wolves who'd thought themselves untouchable, realize they'd made a catastrophic mistake. Counselor Devon dropped to his knees first. He was the youngest, barely 30, and his wolf recognized superior power faster than his pride could resist. His head bowed, his neck exposed in the ultimate gesture of submission. "Forgive me, my queen," he whispered. "I was wrong." Then Thorne, his bravado crumbling in the face of actual Luna power. Then Marcus. Then the others, one by one, their knees hitting stone as their wolves overrode their human resistance, until only Aldrich and Brennan remained standing, both shaking with the effort of resisting what their instincts screamed at them to do. "Kneel," I said quietly. Not a command. A simple statement of inevitable fact. Brennan's legs gave out first. He crashed to his knees with a sound like breaking bones, a sob of frustration and fear escaping his throat. Aldrich held out longest. He'd been controlling me for 5 years, after all. He'd built his entire identity around being the power behind the throne, the voice that guided the broken Luna Queen. Admitting defeat meant admitting he was nothing, meant facing consequences for crimes he'd committed while wearing the mask of loyalty. But in the end, his wolf made the choice his pride couldn't. He fell to his knees, head bowed, shoulders shaking. 10 wolves knelt before me. 10 conspirators who'd thought themselves invincible, brought low by the woman they'd underestimated. The silence in the throne room was absolute. No one moved. No one breathed. I pulled my wolf back gradually, let my eyes fade to their normal ice blue, but I kept enough power radiating to remind everyone present exactly who ruled here. Then I walked past the kneeling council members, past the shocked nobles and wide-eyed servants, and headed for the doors that led to the dungeons. "Captain Marcus," I said without looking back, "if any of them move before I return, you have my permission to consider it an act of continued treason." "Yes, my queen." The satisfaction in his voice was audible. The walk to the dungeons felt different this time. Not a secret midnight journey, but a public declaration. Guards straightened as I passed, heads bowing in respect. Servants curtsied deeply. Even the stones of the castle seemed to recognize that something fundamental had shifted in the balance of power. Rowan was standing at his cell bars when I arrived, as if he'd been waiting. Maybe he'd felt what happened through the mate bond. Maybe he'd just known, the way true mates always know when everything changes. "Is it done?" he asked. "Not quite." I pulled the key from the guard who'd followed me down, one of Captain Marcus's men, loyal and steady. But we're close. The lock clicked open. Rowan stepped out of the cell, still in the torn and bloodied clothes they'd put him in, still sporting the bruises they'd given him, but standing tall despite it all. His storm-gray eyes found mine, and the mate bond flared between us, gold and silver light that I could actually see now that my wolf was fully awake. "Ready to meet your Luna Queen's court?" I asked, offering my hand. His fingers laced through mine. "I've been ready since the moment I made you laugh." We walked back to the throne room together, hand in hand, and I felt power thrumming through our joined palms. Two halves of a whole, finally united. When we entered the throne room, still packed, the council still kneeling, everyone waiting to see what came next, the silence somehow grew even deeper. I led Rowan to the center of the room, to the space where they'd planned to execute him, and I turned to face the assembly, to face my kingdom. "I was the frozen Luna," I began, my voice steady and clear. "A widow trapped in grief so profound, I forgot I was still alive. A queen trapped in chains I couldn't see, controlled by wolves who wore loyalty like a mask, while stealing everything I was meant to protect. For 5 years I let them do it. I let them rob you, manipulate you, hurt you, all because I was too broken to fight back." I squeezed Rowan's hand. "But the moon goddess doesn't ask permission to heal a broken heart. She sent me laughter when I'd forgotten what joy felt like. She sent me love when I thought I'd never feel it again. And most importantly, she sent me the strength to remember who I am." I looked at the council, still kneeling. "You thought grief made me weak. You thought I would stay broken forever, easy to control, simple to manipulate. But grief didn't break me. It tempered me, made me steel where I'd been merely iron. And now that I've remembered my strength, now that I've remembered I don't need your permission to rule, you're going to learn what it means to face a Luna Queen who's done playing games." I turned back to Rowan, cupped his face in my free hand, and spoke loud enough for everyone to hear. "This man is Rowan Ashbourne, son of the Duke of the Northern Territories, decorated war captain, and the wolf chosen by the moon goddess to be my fated mate. I claim him before this assembly, before the kingdom, before the divine powers that bind us. Does anyone here challenge my right to choose my own mate?" Silence. No one spoke. No one dared. Then witness what you tried to prevent. Witness what you thought you could control. I tilted my head, exposing my neck, offering the mark that would complete our bond permanently. "Mark me, Rowan Ashbourne. Make me yours as I am already yours by divine decree." His canines descended, his eyes glowing wolf-bright. He lowered his head to my neck, and when his teeth pierced my skin, when he marked me as his mate in front of hundreds of witnesses, the bond exploded between us like the sun breaking through storm clouds. Gold and silver light erupted from where we touched, magic so pure and powerful that wolves gasped and shielded their eyes. The pain lasted only a heartbeat, replaced by pleasure so intense I nearly fell. But Rowan held me steady, licking the wound to seal it, pressing his forehead to mine as the mate bond locked into place with finality that could never be undone. "My turn," I whispered, and he tilted his head, offering his neck. I'd marked Kieran once, a lifetime ago. I remembered the ritual, the sacred act of claiming a mate before witnesses, but this felt different. Not a replacement, but a continuation. Not forgetting the past, but honoring it while choosing the future. My canines descended, and I bit down, tasting his blood, feeling his wolf recognize mine on the most fundamental level. The bond blazed brighter, silver light mixing with gold until we were both bathed in radiance that made us look like creatures from legend, like the first Luna and her mate, blessed by the moon goddess herself. When I pulled back, licking the mark to seal it, Rowan was smiling despite the tears streaming down his face. "My queen," he said softly. "My mate. My everything." "My consort," I replied, loud enough for all to hear. "My partner. My choice." The throne room erupted into applause, not from the council, who remained kneeling in their defeat, but from everyone else. Guards, servants, nobles who'd been waiting for someone to challenge the corrupt power structure. They cheered not just for my mate bond, but for the justice it represented, for the promise that things would finally change. I let them celebrate for a moment, then raised my hand for silence. "The 10 members of the council will be tried for their crimes against this kingdom. Evidence will be presented, witnesses will testify, and justice will be served under the law they claim to represent." I looked at each of them in turn. "You wanted to control me because you thought a Luna Queen needed a council to rule. But I am not just Luna anymore. I am Alpha Queen, and I need no one's permission to reign." It wasn't technically accurate. Luna Queens didn't usually claim the Alpha title. But looking at their faces, feeling my wolf's power radiating through the room, I knew it was true. I'd become something new, something neither they nor I had expected. A queen who'd walked through death and grief and emerged with twice the strength she'd started with. The ceremonies that followed were brief, but significant. A priestess of the moon goddess was summoned to bless the mate bond officially. The council members were taken into custody, not the dungeons, but holding rooms suitable for nobility awaiting trial. Rowan was given clean clothes and proper treatment for his injuries. And I finally sat on my throne, with my mate standing beside me, and I governed my kingdom as I should have been doing all along. Later, when the throne room had emptied and night had fallen again, Rowan and I stood on the balcony of my chambers, our chambers now, looking out over the kingdom that had almost been stolen from me. "Do you regret it?" he asked quietly. "Choosing me over peace? Starting a war against the council?" "There was never peace," I corrected. "Only the illusion of it, maintained by my silence. And I didn't start a war. I ended one. The war they'd been waging against me since the day Kieran died." I leaned against him, feeling the mate bond humming contentedly now that we were complete. "I spent 5 years being the frozen Luna, being what everyone needed me to be instead of what I actually was. I'm done with that. I'm done apologizing for surviving, for healing, for choosing happiness when everyone expected eternal grief. What are you now?" He wrapped his arms around me from behind, chin resting on my shoulder. If not the frozen Luna, I thought about it, watching the moon rise over my kingdom, our kingdom. Thought about the journey from that first wink to this moment. Thought about all the women I'd been and all the women I'd become. "I'm Emberly Wildfang," I finally said. "Luna Queen by birthright, Alpha Queen by choice, mate to Rowan Ashbourne by blessing of the moon goddess. And most importantly, I'm free." He kissed the mark on my neck, making the bond pulse with warmth. "I love you." "I know," I smiled. "You've been waiting 5 years to tell me. I figured it out. And you? Do you love me? Or am I just the convenient mate bond the moon goddess threw your way?" I turned in his arms, looking up into those storm-gray eyes that had first made me remember what feeling was like. "I love you," I said simply. "Not because fate decreed it, not because the moon goddess chose you, but because you made me laugh when I'd forgotten how, because you saw me as a woman instead of a tragedy, because you were willing to die rather than let me choose duty over happiness. I love you, Rowan Ashbourne, and I'm going to spend the rest of my very long life proving it." He kissed me then, deep and claiming and full of promise, and as the moon blessed us from above, as the mate bond sang between us, as our wolves settled into contentment neither had known before, I finally understood what the past 5 years had been for. Not punishment, not penance, not endless suffering without purpose. They'd been preparation. The universe breaking me down so I could be rebuilt stronger. Grief teaching me resilience. Loss teaching me what truly mattered. Darkness teaching me to recognize light when it finally appeared. They called me the frozen Luna. They thought ice meant brittle, cold, dead. But they forgot what ice really is. It's water transformed by pressure and cold into something harder than stone. It's beauty and danger combined. It's the patient accumulation of power, waiting for the right moment to become the storm. I was never frozen. I was never broken beyond repair. I was never the weak, controllable widow they thought I was. I was ice. And when I finally melted, I became the flood that washed away everything false and left only truth behind. They called me the frozen Luna. But I was never frozen. I was ice waiting to become the storm.